You're going to be making a series of decisions that may seem small right now, but that will shape your future in ways that are hard to imagine from where you sit today. That is why this conversation matters, not because money is the most important thing, but because money, handled wisely, gives you options. It gives you confidence, it gives you freedom, and it gives you the ability to lead and live with greater intention. I'm Joe Brown, owner of Always Ready Financial Planning. Today, I'm joined by Rob Shaye, currently the thought leader at the Institute for Leadership in a position sponsored by the USAA Educational Foundation, and Spencer Reese, host of the Military Money Manual podcast and author of the Military Money Manual. Spencer, Rob, thanks for being here. Spencer, I'd like to start with you. One of the things that I like is that your book isn't that one-off story that just worked for one person. It really gives you the baseline information that allows you to make the right decisions for yourself. It's not about becoming obsessed with that one quick hit win. It's about building that life with more freedom, more stability, and more choices later on.
Thanks for that, Joe. I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Being able to talk to cadets, midshipmen, just as they're on the cusp of commissioning, of joining whatever active duty branch that they're in, is so exciting. It's a very exciting time in their life for many reasons. For most of you, this will be your first real job, right? This will be your first real paycheck. And it's just a great opportunity to get things right. And you're going to make mistakes. I made mistakes. Joe, I'm sure you made mistakes. Rob, I'm sure you made mistakes along the way. If we can just get the vector right initially, just some very small things, just pointed in the right direction with a little bit of thrust, it's amazing what you can accomplish in just a few, even if you only serve 4 years, if you do an 8-year term. I ended up doing only 12. And I say only 12, it was a long 12 years, but it was amazing, right? And the military provides so many opportunities to build wealth. So everybody has their own idea of how to build wealth, whether it's VA loan, house hacking, cryptocurrency, trading stocks. I mean, there was just an article in the Wall Street Journal the other day about how the investing culture of the military is very different than the civilian world. And everything I heard was so hard to reproduce. It required so much work. It required so much luck. I said, there has to be a better way. And so that's why I started the Military Money Manual, first the website, and then eventually the podcast and the book. So, the book is really about the why. Like, why are we saving? Why are we investing? What's the goal? Is there a finish line? When I first joined the military, I couldn't really see military retirement was 20 years away. And a civilian retirement, most people are talking about 60 or 65. And I thought, surely I don't have to work that long doing a job that maybe I'm not that excited about. Now, I was lucky, right? I was a pilot in the United States Air Force. I loved what I did. I loved the people I worked with. I loved the mission. But some people aren't that lucky. They're not in a role. They're not in a job. And they might feel stuck. They might feel trapped. They might feel like they don't have choices. They don't have freedom. And there's all these other resources, like Military One Source, for example. There's all these resources the military provides you. There's all these briefings. There's all this instruction. But it just tells you the what. It just tells you the where. What is a TSP? Where can you access your paycheck? And no one tells you why you should be doing this or how you should be doing this. And I tried to fill that gap. That's what the book was trying to do, was try to fill that gap and show you this was my why, and it's worked for other people as well. This was my how, and I'll show you a couple hows. I'll show you a couple ways to do the thing. I'll introduce some topics like financial independence, financial freedom, and then it's up to you. The world is your oyster. This is your opportunity, and you can go buy the Dodge Hellcat for 28% APR and spend your entire paycheck on a car. Like, if that's your dream, go for it. But just give me 2 hours of your time, and maybe I can talk you out of the Dodge Hellcat, at least like the premium edition one.
I think that why is such an important point. Another thing that I think is, the win, and I think a lot of people assume that personal finance can wait until later, until they're making more money, until they're married, until they have kids, until you've paid off your career starter loan. But by then, a lot of habits seem to already be in place. And so, Rob, let me bring you in here. When you think about young officers just starting out, why do those small financial decisions they make early matter so much?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And first of all, congrats to the wonderful class of 2026, fellow even year here. So I know you're all going to do super things. And it's, as Spencer said, it's exciting to be with you all today and think about all the great things that you're going to go forth and do. And it doesn't seem like that long ago that I was sitting there in Dimmock Hall listening to perhaps a similar GMT. But these things, these decisions that we make early in our lives, we don't often think about the impact that they may have later in our future. And some of them may seem insignificant at the time, maybe, who your friends are at the time or what major you take or those kinds of decisions. And later on, we realize we can sit back and reflect on it and say, wow, that one thing I did really had a profound impact. Some of these decisions, and that's one of the things I really find fascinating about compound interest, is that it seems pretty slow at first. You don't see the power of it. But then when you just pause and look back, you really get an appreciation for its force. And I didn't see it at the time. I graduated. I started investing in my TSP. And like Spencer said, we all make plenty of mistakes. I'm a mistake-making machine. I still make them. I try not to make the same mistakes or as big mistakes, or especially not the same mistakes twice. But personal finance is one of those things that's going to give you space to make those mistakes. And that's okay. You don't need to get it all right. But if we can point you in the right direction and just give you some critical thought about those decisions. So these small decisions that we make can really translate to tremendous amounts of freedom that we have later in our lives. So I was looking back at some of my notes and some of my spreadsheets from when, my time on active duty, and I looked at my cumulative contributions to my TSP. And I thought I didn't start maxing out my accounts first 2 years, but then my third year out of the academy, I was fortunate enough to budget in a way that allowed me to do that. And I contributed somewhere around just a little bit more than $150,000 to my TSP during my 10 years on active duty. So I spent 10 years on active duty and then 10 years in the reserves. And my TSP has doubled twice, and it's on its way to doubling a third time. And when you think about the impact of that it has in my life, and it's like, wow, I put in this $150,000, about $15,000 a year, and it grew to over $750,000. And it's just phenomenal, right? And I would say it wasn't really that hard. It doesn't take a lot of sacrifice. It's just something that a little nudge in the right direction. And that type of decision can make such a profound impact. And it's not about the pile of money. It's about what that money can do for you and the opportunities and the freedoms that can bring. If that allows you to separate from the service, switch to the reserves, start a business, stay home with your kids, go to grad school on your own. Money can do all of those things and make your life a little bit easier, a little more enjoyable. And that's kind of what I think about when I think of starting out on the right path and the freedom that money can bring.
And I always think back to, when you're steering a ship, it's always earlier to make those course adjustments early in the journey because it's a very small adjustment and it gets you to this totally different place in the end. And I'm sure it's similar flying planes, Spencer, that those small adjustments, end you up on a totally different shoreline later on. And, one of my favorite is, for someone who's 22, 23, early 20s, for every dollar you save at retirement ends up being about $88 of retirement spending. And that's the way I like to think about it is it's money you're going to spend later on, about $88 of retirement spending by the time you do that. So when you go buy that $5 beer, just think, that's $400 that you're talking about later on in retirement. Start making those small decisions on what do I want to do as far as how that goes. A little money more saved, a little less lifestyle creep, a little more patience, just a little bit more intentionality. With that being said, Spencer, I would really like to get your thoughts on that power of compound interest that Rob and I just talked about, and how you bring it in the book.
Einstein may or may not have said it's the most powerful force in the world. There's a lot of quotes attributed to him that he probably didn't actually say, but it truly is. It's one of those things that very small investments made consistently over long periods of time, it almost doesn't matter what your rate of return is. We live in a society now that's blessed where you can access high growth investments. And when I say high growth, maybe like 7 to 10% annual returns, the US stock market, the global stock market. And when we say stock market, we're just talking about ownership of companies, right? When Tim Cook goes to work every day and helps design or market the next iPhone or the next Apple MacBook Pro, I'm an owner of Apple. And you can be an owner of Apple too through the TSP fund. It's right there. It's in the thrift savings plan. It's in the C fund. And that means that the 100, 200, 300,000 employees of Apple computers are working for you. You're a shareholder. You own a little bit of that company. And when we talk about compounding interest, right, like it's not this amorphous thing where it just kind of comes out of the ether. No, you're buying ownership in companies all over the world. And those employees and those companies are working for you, and you get a little share of the profits. Or if the company grows in value, the shares that you hold in that company, they also grow in value. And there's other investments you can make. You can buy bonds, which is an IOU from the government or from a corporation that says, hey, give us a little bit of your money now, and in the future we'll return that money plus a little bit of interest. And there's other investments you can make, but when you make these little investments, and it can just be as simple as, let's say, $500 a month, so $6,000 a year. And you might think, okay, $6,000 a year, 40 years, quick math in public, what's that, about $240,000? What do you think that's going to grow to over 40 years? Is it going to 2x? Is it going to 4x, 5x, 10x? And the crazy thing is it over 10x's. It ends up being about $2.9 million at the end of a 40-year time period. So if you start investing $500 a month at a 10% return, which is about what the U.S. share market has done before inflation over the last 100 years, you could end up with a $3 million nest egg in your 60s when you're getting ready for a traditional retirement. But here's the thing, right? Is you're sitting there and you're like, great, future me, 60-year-old me is going to be very happy with that. What about 30-year-old me? What about 40-year-old me? What I can tell you is, having lived this, is when you have savings, when you have money set aside, like Rob said earlier, it's not the dollar amount even, it's what it represents. And what it can represent is opportunity. It can represent freedom. It can represent choices, so that you have the freedom to make choices that are in your best interest or in your family's best interest. So if you get to the end of your service commitment and you said, you know what, thanks a lot, Coast Guard, thanks for the education, and really enjoyed my 4 years, but I am really tired of being on boats and I want to go do something else. If you have, after a 4-year period of service, if you have $50,000, $70,000, possibly even $100,000 saved up, that gives you, depending on your lifestyle, that can give you 2, maybe 3 years of going and doing something else that doesn't pay you any money, right? That could be setting up a business. That could be going and getting further education, but you probably have access to a GI Bill. So now you can pay for some of your expenses while you're getting your MBA or, whatever further education you want. Or it can mean, you know what? I never had the opportunity to just be a 20-something and go backpack around Europe. So you might say, I'm 27, I still got time. They'll still let me into the hostels. And you might say, I'm going to go backpack Europe for a year. And with $100,000 in the bank, you can have a very nice backpacking experience around Europe. So yes, compounding interest is a powerful force. And we do tend to focus on, okay, $1 saved today is $88 in the future. But what about all those time periods in between? And $1 that you send to your future self, if you're investing it wisely, if you're investing it properly, it's going to grow. And you don't have to wait till you're 60 or 50 or even 40. You can just send $1 from your future self today to your future self a year from now. And that dollar is going to grow, and it's going to give you freedom and choices and opportunities. So, but if you're spending your entire paycheck, if you're living paycheck to paycheck and you're never building a margin of safety, if you don't have an emergency fund, if you don't have money set aside that's not already earmarked for a specific purpose, then it's tough. It's really tough. And this is why people get to the end of a 20-year Coast Guard career and they retire and they immediately walk into a GS job and they have to start working again because they have built a lifestyle that's unsustainable and that requires them to continue working. And there's nothing wrong with GS jobs. And if you want to do a GS job, that's great. Go for it. But have the intentionality, have the introspection. Are you building the life that you want to live? And if you're not, it's on you. I mean, this is I think the core of the message of my book is life is a game. And yes, there are rules, but as you get older and gain hopefully a little bit of wisdom, a little bit of knowledge, and a little bit of resources, you get to start writing the rules of that game. And you can build the life that you want and then save and invest for it such that in a very short period of time, well before standard retirement age of 65 or 60, you can be financially independent. You can be financially free such that the resources that you've accumulated, that you've saved and invested, can support your lifestyle. And that's something that gets back to that core question of like, why are we saving and investing? And I think it goes way beyond just, I want to be a millionaire. I want to drive a Ferrari. I want to drive a Lamborghini. Those are great things. Those are great cars. But it's more about, can you create a lifestyle that's sustainable that you want to live?
And I think finances really does, not only does it represent freedom, but it really affects how you show up in the rest of your life, your stress levels, your flexibility, your relationships. And I would even argue it affects your leadership. And so, Rob, let me ask you, do you see a connection between financial discipline and the ability to lead with more confidence and clarity?
Yeah, absolutely. When I think back on my time in the Coast Guard, we're thrust into these leadership positions and we're constantly being observed and watched and sometimes emulated, and sometimes our behavior is the opposite of what folks want to model. And hopefully it's more of the, after 4 years of training at the academy, hopefully, folks feel somewhat prepared. I mean, I felt when I was graduating and heading off to my 270-foot ship, it was scary. And I knew that I was going to have a division to lead right away as the weapons officer, but we're constantly thrust into that leadership position. And what you notice there is that folks want to trust you and they need you to be present. They need you to have your full attention. They need you to look out for their safety and their well-being. And you're expecting them to also bring themselves fully present to work. And unfortunately, if our finances aren't squared away, we're constantly distracted. So it's one of those things, it's like your health, right? If your health isn't up to its top game, it's going to be hard to execute and perform your job. And as a leader, we need to be there for those who are counting on us. And it goes both ways. I saw many times in the Coast Guard where folks were facing financial stress and hardship. And in today's world where government shutdowns seem to be, in every other year, unfortunately, they're so common. The Coast Guard's not getting paid reliably. I mean, my wife's on active duty. She just said she was lucky. She got paid, this cycle, but she might miss her next paycheck. Now, it looks like the government shutdown will have been in the past when you're seeing this video here, but it's going to come again. That shutdown's going to happen again. Are you all going to have an emergency fund where you don't need to take out a CGMA loan? And are you going to be talking to those who count on you for that guidance so that they know what an emergency fund is and where to keep it and how to earn compound interest, even if it's at 3.5% in a high yield savings account and the rest gets swept off into your TSP? They're going to be looking for that guidance and that leadership so that they can be fully present when we're doing such important work like search and rescue and homeland security and, protecting the Arctic and all of these amazing jobs that the Coast Guard does. And the other thing I want to add as I read through Spencer's book, I've had the copy for a couple of years and I always refer to it. I love it. In fact, I teach personal finance at UC Berkeley and I have many students who are ROTC candidates and I hand out the book to them as well. And it's inspiring thinking about their future and learning the right habits right out of the gate. So you don't have to correct anything. A lot of times in the financial planning world, we're correcting bad habits that people made at age 50, or if they didn't save to this date, you have to correct it. We're all in the position now when you're entering at 22, 24, you get to start off on the right foot. And it's so attainable. What we're talking about is so doable. When we talk about saving some money into your Roth IRA, into your Roth TSP, I looked at what an ensign is making in San Diego for this year. Ensign's going to make $8,000 a month. Just about half of that is tax-free. So the civilian equivalent is more than that, but it's about $100,000 a year, right? And just about everyone's going to graduate the Coast Guard Academy with no debt. That is an insane opportunity. When you look at all the other graduates across the country in the year 2026, certainly my students at Cal, most of them are graduating with massive student loans. And we get this head start. Now, we worked hard for it, but we get this head start where we get to graduate without debt.
I just wanted to double click on something Rob said there about how, as officers, as leaders, financial resilience and like keeping your own financial house in order, to me, that's just hygiene. That is just, if as an officer, there are certain things like physical fitness, right? Like you just have to be able to show up and pass your your physical fitness test. And I put money right in that same category of it. It's a hygiene thing. So if you are getting crushed with auto loan payments, you need to figure that out. If money is a source of stress and it's something that you're thinking about all the time, or you're living paycheck to paycheck, that's a compute cycle in your brain that's being distracted, right? That's being pulled away. And that means that you're not thinking about where the ship is, or you're not thinking about where the ship is going, or you're not thinking about, I've got this troop, I've got this person that works for me, and they seem a little bit distracted at work. So I need to go sit down with them and say, hey, what's going on? And, pull them in and make sure that they're doing okay. And if they've got, a lot of times you're going to have people working for you that are in credit card debt, that have bought too much car. That is the number one thing I see for enlisted officer. It seems like in the military, and I think it's because everything else is taken care of for us. Housing, transportation, food. Those are the three biggest expenses of most American households. Well, you're getting a tax-free housing allowance, or you're living in government quarters. So housing's taken care of. Transportation, not taken care of. And then food, well, you get a basic allowance for sustenance, right? That doesn't cover all of your food, but at least it's a tax-free payment that you're receiving there. So I think what people say is they look at this giant paycheck and they think, oh my gosh, I can afford $1,000 a month, a $2,000 a month car payment. And I just want to drive home the fact that just because you can doesn't mean you should. And if you can just rein in buying that big truck or buying that car, that if you can just delay that purchase for 2, 3, maybe 4 years and buy it when, you promote to O2 or to O3, as a gift to yourself, save up along the way and then go and buy the thing. But in the meantime, just when you get to your first, I don't know what you call it, but in the Air Force, we call it a base, right? So a dock, a shipyard, when you get to your first unit, go look in the parking lot, right? And notice who's driving the most expensive cars. It's probably not the commander. It's probably not the, what do you call it, EO, executive officer or whatever, right? It's probably not the senior leadership. They're probably driving the Honda Civics. They're probably driving the big minivans. Now, granted, they probably have the wife and the kids, or the husband and the kids. But if you look at what the senior officers are driving, it's usually not the nicest car in the parking lot. And people, right, Teslas, everybody loves Teslas, or at least they did a couple of years ago. The Tesla Model 3 is not an expensive car, right? So if you want to go buy a Tesla, sure, go for it. But notice that is a big chunk of your paycheck. And if you can just avoid buying too much car, that was the number one mistake I see people make. The big truck, renting the apartment that's, twice what's necessary, or not getting a roommate in the apartment for those first couple of years, and then the fast wedding that ends in divorce. Those are the three biggest killers of wealth in the military. And if you can just pick one of those, you're going to do a lot better. But if you do all three, you're going to make your life pretty hard. There's a saying about, hard choices, easy life, easy choices, hard life. Well, make the hard choices early in your career, and you can set yourself up for a much easier life. Look, in the first 3 pages, I said, if you don't have time to read anything else, it's 2 pages, it's 10 steps. If you have the attention span of a goldfish, just read those 2 pages, do those things, and you will be 90%, you'll be ahead of 80 or 90% of your peers. If you have an afternoon, the book is not that long. It's less than 150 pages. Most people finish it in 2 or 3 hours. I would say read it cover to cover first. And here's the thing, right? Commissioning is a busy time in your life. You have a million things to do. When you're getting to your first unit, or you're getting to your first training unit, you're going to have a lot of things to learn very quickly. You're probably not going to have the brain space to go and log into your TSP. You literally might not have an hour to go to tsp.gov and log in and make sure that you're set up in a life cycle fund. That's fine. But when your training's done, there's going to be a gap there. It's probably going to be like a week, right? When you're PCSing to your first operational unit. Take a weekend, take an afternoon on a Saturday, read the book cover to cover, and then use it as a reference material. Come back to it later, because things are going to come up, and you're going to hear someone talking in your unit, or you're going to have an older officer mentor, or maybe a senior enlisted personnel that's working for you. And they're going to say, did you get your TSP set up? Did you take the USA Career Star loan? Did you take the Navy Federal Career Kickoff loan? I noticed that you're driving a Dodge Hellcat. What's your payments on that thing? And it's a short book. It's intentionally short. You can read it once, and you can, like Rob was saying, it's a great reference to come back to later in your career, especially, like someone might come to you and say, hey, I want to sell you this insurance product. There's a chapter in there about that. There's a philosophy section in the back. There's a list of recommended reading in there. There's a whole section on deployments. Deployments right now are probably a hot topic for most people in the military. There's a lot of Air Force, Army, Marines, Coast Guard, Navy in combat zones getting CZTE, combat zone tax exclusion pay. That's going to make most of your paycheck tax-free. That is a huge opportunity. You can take tax-free money that you're not paying income tax on, put it into Roth TSP, Roth IRA accounts. It's going to grow tax-free, and in retirement, you're going to tap it tax-free. It's a triple tax advantage of military service. No one's talking about this. And you have this opportunity. You have this, and this might be you in the next year. You might be deployed to a combat zone. Take advantage of it. Use this as an opportunity to put yourself that much farther forward. And we've got ebook, we've got audiobook versions. So however you download your information into your brain, you can even go ask any of the AI bots. They know about it. Claude, ChatGPT, it's all there. Summarize Spencer Reese's military money manual. I will say, I think my writing is a little bit better than theirs. There is advantages to reading it, but make highlights, dog ear it. And then one of the things I'm really proud of in there is the investing principles. Low cost, automated, diversified, and simple. I mean, those are principles that you should apply to your entire life. But if you can keep things low cost, and when I say cost, both in time, energy, money, all of those categories, keep it low cost. Automate. Make the decision now that removes 100 future decisions. Like Rob was saying, and you've been saying, Joe, the thrift savings plan. If you can just, as soon as you start getting paid, and that might take 6 to 8 weeks after you enter active duty, just because the pay systems take that long to catch up. But as soon as you're getting paid, log into your software and start contributing to your Roth TSP. It's going to default to 5%. Change it to 10, change it to 15%. If you do it on day one, you're never going to notice that it's missing. And then a year or two later, log in and make sure you're in the life cycle fund. You're under the blended retirement system. You're under the BRS. You're going to default into the life cycle fund. But just log in there and see how it's doing. You might be surprised, how much it's grown in just a year or two.
And Spencer, I love the life cycle funds as that easy button, the classic Staples easy button. You just push that and it goes. Yeah. If you're doing it in your Roth IRA, it's usually called a target date fund. But those two things are your easy button. That just simplify your life. And 10 years from now, you can start getting more complicated. But right now, that's all you need.
Or you cannot get complicated. I mean, that's the beauty of it as if you look at the long-term data, right? Active managers, 90% of active managers who are paid billions of dollars to pick the best winning stocks can't beat their indexes over 10, 15, 20-year time periods. And so what makes you think you can? And that's why I love the life cycle funds, because it's just, you make one decision, you say, I'm just going to put my money in the life cycle fund, appropriate to your age, right? So let's see, you were probably born in like 2004, 2005, some of you. The life cycle 2070, life cycle 2075.
Yep, it's 2070, yep.
Yeah, I mean, brilliant. Just set it, forget it, never come back to, and 10 years from now, if you stay active duty and you keep contributing, or you're in the reserves and you keep contributing, you're going to log in and be like, oh my gosh, how much money is in here? So.
The other thing I just want to jump in and add is, I echo all of that. My TSP is still 100% in the life cycle fund. I've pushed it out to, 2070 because I don't need that money when I'm 60. So I'm going to push it further out so I can, dial down on that aggressiveness. But there will be a lot of distractions. People will come in with promises of, the life cycle fund isn't, or the TSP isn't, crafty enough, or I can do better than the TSP. There will be people pulling you away, and they're going to promise you things like, sign up for my TSP newsletter, right? Teach you how to day trade the TSP, or I'll teach you how to open a Robinhood account and crush returns in the TSP. And all of that is just what it sounds like. It's a distraction, and it's a get rich quick scheme. Yeah. Compound interest, you don't need to hit a grand slam every time. Let compound interest work its magic. 10% return is going to get you to such a comfortable retirement if you follow these principles, that we don't need to swing for the fences every time. Just consistent singles and doubles are what we're talking about here. It's so easy. And, I use the analogy when I teach my students, like, do I want 6-pack abs by Friday? Sure. Yeah, that's great. Is that possible? No. Are people going to promise me that? Yes. It takes years to develop that. just like give compound interest the time, and you will get to your financial goal, and you don't need to have these like distractions pull you away. So it's very easy to do, right? You just divert your money, like Spencer said, you're not even going to miss it. And I just want to make sure we're advocating that. We would all agree, I'm sure, we want young JOs to go make those memories and create those memory dividends. The opposite of what we're saying is like, none of us want to see you save so much money that you're not enjoying your 20s and 30s. Those are amazing years. I had so many great trips with my academy classmates who I'm still friends with to this day, attend weddings, we traveled internationally, do all those things. You can do all those things and still max your TSP and Roth IRA. It's possible. 20, 25% savings rate, living with roommates, having a reasonable, modest car that you're not refreshing every 5 years. These are the big choices that you can make that can get you to that finish line earlier and still have a super enjoyable time with your friends, which is critical, right?
And so to kind of sum this all up is, what we're saying is you don't need to have your whole financial future figured out in the next week before you graduate. You do need a heading. You need a few sound principles, the humility to learn. And Spencer has kindly given you a great tool that will give you those sound principles and the place to learn from a trusted source. Use some discipline, make some small good choices before life gets more complicated. And then you're going to start to see returns over time. We've given you the chart. We've given you the compass. Now it's your turn to set your course and to make these small decisions for yourself.
Just a quick note from one of our sponsors, and then we'll be right back to the show.
It's no secret Spencer and I are both huge fans of the Thrift Saving Plan, the military's version of the 401k retirement plan. We've both been investing in the TSP for over 14 years and are thrilled to announce we've consolidated all the information you need to know into a new course called the Confident TSP Investing Course.
That's right. The course is a comprehensive guide to navigating the TSP, breaking it down to easy, bite-sized chunks that lay out the basics of the thrift savings plan, the funds available, and the investing strategies so you can build wealth while you serve.
We both know what it's like to be a beginner and to be overwhelmed with all the information that's out there about investing in the TSP. Head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, Tango Sierra Papa, to find our simple breakdown of all you need to know. You get lifetime access, and we'll have a growing library of content. And one of my favorite parts about the course is that for every course we sell, we're going to be donating one to an E4 or below.
Yeah, I love that feature of the course, Jamie. So if you're an officer, an NCO, a senior NCO out there, and you purchase a course, first of all, thank you. And also know that you're helping a fellow service member, a sailor, a soldier, a Marine, an airman, a guardian, a Coast Guardsman, E4 or below, take one step closer to their financial success.
The link's in the show notes, or head over to militarymoneymanual.com/TSP, where you can sign up for the Confident TSP Investing course. Now, back to the show.
So one last thing, Spencer and Rob, if the cadets wanted to reach out to you for more information or find out more about you, do you guys have a good place where they could go? Spencer, you want to start?
I just wanted to point out for the cadets, the Military Money Manual podcast. Everybody loves a good podcast. We did a special episode for brand new officers. It's episode 132 of the Military Money Manual podcast. Anywhere you get podcasts, Apple, Spotify, Amazon, it's there. Episode 132. And it is less than an hour. So next time you're in the car, you're commuting to your first duty station, just put this episode on. If you're a JO, you come into my office and you say, what am I meant to do with my money? I only got an hour to tell you. This is it. This is the podcast episode. The book is on Spotify as well. You're going to have a physical copy, but there is tons of ways to download this information and to start just marinating on it, just percolating, letting the concepts just like start to enter your brain. And what you're going to realize is once you get the system set up, money is something I try to create a situation where money is not the focus of my life. Relationships, fun, travel, adventure, doing my job. All of these other things are the focus of my life. That is where my attention goes. And my money runs as a system in the background. My investments grow. The other day, I realized that I hadn't checked my TSP balance for 4 months. And guess what? It didn't matter. It was still growing. It was still investing, and it was still compounding. And all these companies that are held in there, those employees are still working for me as a shareholder. So I'll just leave you with, I want you to pay yourself first. And I talk about that in the book. So if you want more information about that, you can go Google that. You can go look at that, or you can Google it. And then I want you to focus on things that move the needle. And like Rob said, your 20s, your 30s, these are the times to create memories. These are the times to exchange some of your hard-earned dollars to go to that wedding, to go to that ski trip, go to Yacht Week in Croatia. Make those memories that you can't do. Yacht Week is a different experience when you're in your 40s, and you can't go back. You can't go back. And remember that right now you are time billionaires. You have billions of seconds ahead of you. Warren Buffett, Elon Musk, they would trade every dollar they have to be your age. Just remember that you have this tremendous time wealth, and time is our most precious resource. So at the same time that you want to make sure that you're saving and investing, also make sure, like Rob said, you're living your life, you're creating those memories, and you're enjoying the ride. You only get one shot at this. We haven't figured out how to take another shot at this. So I hope that after you read the book, after listening to us talk, that you feel empowered, that you understand this is a game and there are rules, and I lay out the rules in the book, but eventually you can get to a position where you can start writing your own rules. And that's just a tremendously powerful position to be in. You can find me militarymoneymanual.com. I'm also on Instagram at Military Money Manual. And then the podcast is everywhere you can get a podcast, Military Money Manual Podcast. Me and my buddy, Jamie, he's still active duty, and he runs the podcast with me. It's a tremendous resource. Our most popular episode, I mentioned 132, which is for new military officers, but our most popular episode is episode number 2. And Jamie and I sat down in my office. This was like in the middle of COVID, and we cracked open a couple beers, and we just talked about the TSP for an hour. And it's turned out to be our most popular episode. I don't know why. We just somehow we captured lightning in the bottle on that episode. But episode number 2 about the thrift savings plan, we've gotten tons of good feedback on that. I didn't understand the TSP when I joined the military. Just like Rob, I contributed maybe $200 my first year, and then I didn't contribute for the next 2 years. It wasn't until my 3rd year that I finally started contributing, and in my 4th year of active duty that I started maxing it out. Once I figured it out, I went all in. And so I want you to not make that same mistake and to go all in earlier. And I think once you understand what it represents, what the thrift savings plan is, and what it can mean for your future self, I think it's a tremendous opportunity. So thanks for the opportunity, Joe. Congratulations to the class of 2026. So excited to see what you're doing. Please reach out, Spencer at militarymoneymanual.com. You can email me. You can DM me on Instagram. If you DM me, it's going to be me responding. So super stoked that you all are getting the book. And let me know if you have any questions. Let me know if I can help you in any way.
And Rob, where can they connect with you online?
Folks can find me on LinkedIn. You can just search for me on LinkedIn, Robert Shaye. I also have a financial education company, Fireside Finances. You can find me there, or Rob at firesidefinances.com. Yeah, I mentioned that I taught the personal finance class at the Coast Guard Academy for 3 years. To this day, if I'm on base picking up my daughters, or if I'm out with my wife at a unit holiday party, people will come up to me. And I don't remember them because I had a lot of students, or they look a little bit differently now, but they'll come up to me and they'll say, Mr. Shaye, oh my gosh, I got to tell you, that class that you taught has made all the difference in my life. And it is the single best class I've ever taken. And this isn't like a one-off occurrence. This happens to me usually a couple times every few months, or I'll get emails. And my wife never thought that she's like, you're like a celebrity among the military money or the Coast Guard money community. And she said, this is unbelievable how many people approach her, because she has my same last name now. And she says the resounding answer is that people use this information. This is so helpful, and it is making such a difference in people's lives. Not because it gives them dollars in an account, but because it gives them the freedom to make their own life decisions and be in control of their own time, right? So if I want to take a summer off and go camping with my 3 daughters, I have the resources to do that. And I don't need to worry about business revenue for 4 months, because I have a cushion that I've built up. And to be able to control your own time is the most precious gift we could give our future selves, right? So I would say, you now have this great book. You have this access to resources. It's very doable. You don't have to get it all right. We just need to kind of get it generally correct. every time we advance and promote, revisit this book and revisit your financial plan. Can you live with a little bit of an increase? Or could you live, if you promote to O3, could you still live like an O2? Of course. You had a great time living as an O2, you could still live as an O3 like that, right? And could you divert that money into the TSP or your Roth IRA if you're not already maxing it out, or into a brokerage account if you are maxing it out? Because these little decisions like that are going to give you so much freedom and opportunity later. And the other thing I'm just going to put a plug in for, I know there's a lot of information thrown at you at once. I just want to plant a seed for two other really important topics. One is your post 9/11 GI Bill, and then two is grad school, right? So you have the opportunity to go to grad school with the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard will pay for it, and you get to still get paid as an officer, hang up the uniform for 2 to 3 years, depending on how long your program is, and then preserve your post 9/11 GI Bill for your future, your spouse's future, or your kid's future. So my wife and I both did that. The service paid for our grad school. Still got our paycheck, still get years towards retirement. I know grad school is like far off in the future. I just want to plant a seed that you'll come back to someday. And if you're still loving the Coast Guard and you're still loving your job and you are interested in more education, going to grad school with the Coast Guard is a tremendous opportunity. And getting smart on the post 9/11 GI Bill benefits is another $100,000 decision that you can take control of. I've seen my own classmates make terrific choices with their post 9/11 GI Bill and make awful choices with their post 9/11 GI Bill, essentially waste months of their bill because they didn't want to shell out $5,000 or $7,000 out of their pocket. And I sat back and I thought, oh my goodness, that post 9/11 GI Bill benefit is worth $400,000 to $500,000. So my wife and I get to send our kids to school for free to top universities across the country because we took the time to understand how the GI Bill works and transferred that down to our kids. So at 6 years, 6 years after graduation, so in 2032, you will be able to transfer that GI Bill if you have a dependent. Once you transfer it, it takes 4 more years for that transfer to take full effect. So you're looking at a total of 10 years. Some of you are going directly to flight school. You're already going to be in the service for a significant amount of time, right? So to understand things like the GI Bill can tremendously change your financial trajectory, and understand things like going to grad school with the service. So I know a little bit of a diversion there. I wanted to take the time to plug it because those concepts are as critical as understanding the TSP. And I'm excited for you, the class of 2026. It's going to be a great time. You won't be able to predict exactly where you end up. I never could. I have so many fond memories of my 10 years on active duty and 10 years in the Coast Guard Reserve. So I look forward to seeing what you're all going to do, and best of luck to you, Royals all the way.
Cadets, you can connect with me on LinkedIn, although Joe Brown can be kind of hard to find. So the better two places probably are to go to alwaysreadyfp.com or email me at joe@alwaysreadyfp.com. And then you can always get a hold of me also on Bears Supporting Bears, which is the alumni network that we have. And you can find me there, and those DMs come right through to my email and I'll be able to answer you. Thank you again, Spencer and Rob, for joining us. And congratulations again to the class of 2026, and good luck at your first units.
Thanks so much for tuning in to this episode of the Military Money Manual podcast. If you're enjoying the show, please feel free to rate, subscribe, and leave a review wherever you listen to your podcasts. This helps others find the show, and we really appreciate it. Thanks again for tuning in, and we'll catch you in the next episode.
The views and opinions presented here are those of the speakers and do not necessarily represent the views of the DoD or its components. Reference to any commercial products or services does not constitute DoD endorsement of those products or services.